by a show of hands. Who was the first? Who rode Alpen Fury for the first time today? Anybody? Only a handful. Any initial reactions from that first-time rider? Was it worth the wait or not? Okay, good. That's good. Good to hear. All right, so for the questions, I'll ask that if you could raise your hand, and then maybe Danusha can help me decide who's going to ask the first question and so on. And then if you could stand up, make it so, be nice and loud so we can hear your question, and then I'll repeat the question before I answer it. Okay? Okay, so the question was about the future. You know how I answer questions about the future, but the question was, do we think that AI will play a part in roller coaster design? So that's a tough question for me to answer. We don't really use AI here, maybe a little bit on the artistic side. It's possible, I suppose, that AI could play a part, but the problem I see with AI is that it uses previous information to generate what we believe is new information, but it's not. It's sort of like a snake eating its own tail, you know? So garbage in, garbage out. I think the human mind is more creative than what AI can produce. It may not be as quick as what AI can produce, but I think humans are infinitely more creative in developing new products. So. Another question. We'll go blue sweater.
Yeah, really appreciate what you've done with Alpen Fury and all the theming, but I was wondering if you could just add to it more cowbell going into the fly. If it had that sound effect, perfect.
That's a good thought. Did anyone notice the cowbells we have hanging from the rafters in the station? So, those cowbells were produced by Danusha's team. Danusha works in creative and event services, and they were fabricated in our shop to hang in the station as a nod to the Alpen villages of Switzerland and Germany. So, but cowbell, that's an interesting idea. Maybe people would want to hear more cowbell. I don't know. Maybe the younger generation doesn't know the more cowbell joke from Saturday Night Live, but that goes way back to my youth. The question was, is there a ride or attraction here that presents the most challenging effort on a maintenance side? I'd have to say it's Sledgehammer, probably. It is a one of a kind in the world. It was a prototype built by Huss Rides and Attractions. There was never another one built, and it has been a challenge to keep running. It's definitely unique, and it's been a challenge for my team on the maintenance and engineering side to keep going. And we have modernized parts of it over the years to make it more reliable. And I think we've done that. It's not as reliable as I'd like it to be, but we've definitely improved that. We've cut our electrical downtime by about 50% with some new technology that we put on it. But I'm very blessed to have a very strong technical team here to help support what we do. So yeah, it's a challenge, but I think it has a good fit here in our park with all the other diverse collection of rides that we have. So did that answer your question? Okay. Another question? Green shirt here. So the question was Alpen Fury single sourced? Like, did we go to one manufacturer and work alone with them, or did we go through a competitive bid process? So we did go to a competitive bid process. So we came up with the concept for the ride. We wanted it to dive into the mountain and blast out of the mountain, and we wanted to head up towards the main gate and come back. We wanted to have multiple inversions. We wanted to have a launch system that would take care of that. So we went to multiple ride manufacturers with those desires on our list. And we received proposals from all of them, actually except for one. One of them said, we're booked up, we can't meet your schedule. But we ended up settling on Premier, and we worked along the way with Premier to optimize the design of their trains and their launch systems to deliver what we have now. So it was a big effort, took a long time, but we learned a lot looking at other attractions around the world. So the question was, do we get a quote for engineering first, where we get a design, and then we go out for bid on pricing to build and install it? No. So we look for a proposal for a supply of the equipment and the engineering of the equipment. We price all of the installation and the construction of the foundations and all the buildings and the modifications to the mountain. So we receive a singular bid. We ask for the proposal to include the ride track profile and the speed profile, and the number of foundation points, some superlatives that we can help market the ride with, as well as a preliminary schedule and obviously a cost. So once we have all that from all the bidders, then we take that and make our decision. So the question was, how did we, with Alpen Fury, arrive with 9 inversions? So we didn't go out asking for 9 inversions. We wanted to have multiple inversions. Obviously, different manufacturers can do different things with their trains, and some trains can't do 9 inversions with that length of track that we have. We wanted to have something that would be unique to our park. We don't have a high inversion count ride here. We don't have multiple launch coasters here. And we don't have a super tight dynamic ride like that. So we didn't look to go to 10. We wanted something that would be special and unique to us. I mean, having a record appeals to a fringe group of our guests. It doesn't appeal to the masses. But a unique, high thrill, tight ride does appeal to our core audience. And that's what's important, because that's who comes to the park. That's who pays the bills, right? So the question was, how do we prioritize improvements or updates to rides here in the park? So we've got lots of rides here in the park. We're a very big site with lots of attractions. And some of the rides are quite, I wouldn't say quite old, they're not as old as me, but actually one ride is older than me. Anybody know what ride that is? Yeah, the antique carousel, 1928. So it's coming up on its centenary in 2028. It'll be 100 years old at that point. So I'm definitely not that old. But when it comes time to make updates and improvements on rides, we look at a couple things. Is the ride still safe is the first thing. If it's not safe, then we need to take care of that. And we prioritize after that. So we look at, is the ride reliable? If it's not reliable, then we want to make improvements. Is the ride have components on it that we can't source anymore? So hydraulic pumps from the 1980s aren't manufactured anymore, so we may need to update hydraulic pumps to get parts for those pumps, or valves, or even electrical components. So some of the old PLCs or logic control systems on rides, they're not supported anymore, so we need to update those. So when we look at all the different bits, then we prioritize by which are the brightest fires that are burning, and we need to assign money to those. So sometimes things don't rise up to the top of the list. I'd really like to paint all the rides in the park, but painting is always sort of low on the list in comparison to those other things. So we don't have an infinite amount of money, and I mean, if we charged all of our guests $1,000 for a visit, then we'd have a lot of money to do a lot of things, but it's a balance, right? We need to make sure that our price points are appropriate, that we attract people to come and visit. And we still need to be profitable as a company, but we also need to take care of the equipment. And if we can't take care of the equipment, then we need to remove it. And we don't say die on a lot of things here at our park. We keep a lot of things going, partly because we have a strong technical team here to support them. And we have a large attendance base that helps support the funds to keep them going too. So. Okay, so 2-part question. First part was, how long does it take from when we come up with the concept to getting it built? So we started talking about this attraction in the early spring of 2023. So it took just over 2 years to fine-tune the concept, go out to bid, get bids, collect the bids, work with the manufacturer on the detailed design, because we have to do a full survey of the site. We ended up doing a 3D survey of the mountain, inside and out, so that we could have a very clear picture of what is supporting the structure and where all the skin is. when the mountain was designed, it was designed with paper drawings back in 1979. So all the drawings were hand drawn, and the mountain wasn't built exactly the way the hand drawings were done, because the mountain skin was all done by hand, by craftsmen, tying that rebar and all the wire lath. So where it showed a peak in one place, we might not have had a peak on those drawings. So with that 3D laser scan, we were able to build a 3D model on our computers that we could map out the ride through the mountain and make it fit and have those close encounter elements, the head choppers going into the mountain, through the mountain, and coming out through the roof. So it took a long time for us to produce that data set to be able to share with the manufacturer, and then working with their engineers to fine-tune that layout. It took some time, and then to get it built and then installed, it was just over 2 years to get it. But I think it paid off. I think it was worth it. The second part of the second question was, how many times have I ridden it? It's over 30 times. It's 31 or 32. I've lost track. I rode it a lot when we first opened it, but the ride's always so busy. I feel bad taking a seat when someone else should be on the train. Yeah. So there was another question back there. Yeah, in the black. So the question was about landscaping here in the park. So we have a 300-acre site. Lots of grass, lots of trees, lots of shrubs, lots of flowers. There's 3 full-time people that work here year-round that take care of the grounds for us. And then in the summer season, or in the spring, we hire another crew of seasonal employees to help us cut the grass, prune the trees, plant the flowers, deadhead the flowers, and there's about 50 of those people that help us with that throughout the summer. And then in the winter, we also get some help during Winterfest from contractors to help us with the snow clearing and the ice management. But it's a big site to take care of. So. And the winters here in our area can be really mild, or like last winter, they can be quite harsh. So the question was, whose idea was it to come up with the modified train design for Alpen Fury? That was my desire to come up with making those changes. So I proposed changes to Premier Rides. You probably noticed we have tilting platforms in there. So we worked with a group in Germany to provide those tilting platforms. What that did was it allowed us to get rid of the toe boards that run along the side of the train. So if you've ever ridden another skyrocket train, there's a 4-inch toe board that runs along the side of the train. You got to step over it and step under it, or step over it to get into the train and step over it to get out of the train. And that really slows things down because people aren't used to stepping over things to get in. So I visited a few parks prior, when we were in the design phase. So I visited SeaWorld Orlando to ride Icebreaker. I visited Kennywood to ride their first premier launch ride, the Skyrocket. I spent a fair bit of time watching the operation, seeing where are the issues in this. The other thing that we wanted to improve was the feel of the ride, and that side plate that mounts on the side of the train was an area that we could improve. So we went to a different reach guard. So that little guard that's on the side prevents you from reaching down and getting your hand down into the undercarriage of the train. So we modified that as well. But I think it paid off. Watching the operation here versus watching the operation in other places, you can really notice the difference. Now it's not 100%. It's still tight on those back seats to get in and out of, but it's way better than what it could have been if we hadn't taken those steps. So, yeah. Any other questions in the green? The question was, how do we come up with the idea for the theming of the rides? Do we come up with the theme first and then provide it, or does the ride dictate the theme? Well, here at Canada's Wonderland, back in the Paramount Parks days, we used to theme the rides around the movies. And in this current era of Canada's Wonderland, our themes are related to the theme area that the ride is in. So Yukon Striker, if it was in Medieval Fair, wouldn't have had a Frontier Canada theme to it. It wouldn't have been themed like a mining camp from the 1800s. But because it's in Frontier Canada, we took that opportunity to theme it up like a mining camp or a mining village with those buildings. Alpen Fury, the station is based in the Alpenfest area, sort of in the foothills of the mountain. And we wanted it to fit into that village feel, that Alpen village feel. So it's really based on where the ride is placed, and we try and fit it to that theme of that area. Okay. Go in the back over there. Question is, what's my favorite ride? Well, it depends. I get that question a lot, and I like different rides for different things. So I really like the double launch in Alpen Fury, that first launch over the camel hump into the second launch. I love that. I love the free fall on Yukon Striker, diving into the tunnel at the bottom, and I love the all-out speed on Leviathan. And then I love the airtime on Behemoth. So I love lots of different things for different reasons. There's no one favorite for me. It depends on how I'm feeling that day and what I want to experience. I'm very fortunate because part of my job is I go out and I watch and I listen and I observe the rides, but then I sometimes go up and I want to hop on and see, did something change? Is the ride performing differently than it has? So I'm pretty lucky. My kids, when they were younger, they're 13 and 15 now, and they think, oh, Dad, you know how 13 and 15-year-olds are. But when they were little, they thought I had the best job in the world, being a part of taking a ride from concept to being able to build it. So I still feel like I have one of the greatest jobs in the world. So if you can find a job you love, that you're not really working, right? So anyway. So the question was, what's the process for coming up with the decision to remove a ride? And the example was time warp. How did we come upon the decision to remove it? Well, we can't continually add attractions without adding cost to our operation. So it costs money to maintain a ride and keep it running, and to operate the ride as well. So when we add new attractions, we always weigh, can we add it without an impact to our costs, or do we have to remove something? And we look at all of the different rides in the park and we say, well, what makes the most sense? Is it a low performing ride? Is it a high maintenance ride? Do our guests not really like it anymore? And that ride was not performing very well. So I don't think anybody misses it. There may be some people here today who never got to ride it and they wish they had it on their credit list. Forgive me, I think the question was what influences the color choices for the ride. So here at Canada's Wonderland, we've got a team of people at our corporate design team in Charlotte, and they help us select the colors. So we come up with what we think would be a good color choice, and then they fine-tune that. We have some back and forth, we get some samples, some paint samples from the manufacturer, because what is on your computer screen doesn't always look the way it should be when you get it actually onto the site. So we'll get those cards of paint, we'll take them out to the site, we'll look at them in the sun and in the clouds, and we'll decide, yeah, that's the right color. But it is an iterative process. It's not, yeah, that's the color we're going to go with. No, we have some back and forth to get there. So the question was, once we agreed on Premiere, did Premiere provide the layout alone? Or was there a process where we had some opportunity? With any ride that we put in, whether it's Yukon Striker or Leviathan or Alpen Fury, we have a process where we go through the detailed design. So we have a concept presented. We agree on the length of the track and where the station will go, but when we get into the detailed design with the manufacturer, that's when we have the opportunity to say, no, we think it's too open, we want it to be tighter, we want to have more near-miss opportunities, and that's where we came up with those additional inversions and that tight corkscrew, almost double helix shape of those inversions. And we had many meetings with Premiere to say, no, change this again. No, that's not what we want. Change this back to what we want. And the same thing happened when we did Leviathan. The same thing happened when we did Yukon Striker. It's a process, and it's a partnership with the manufacturer to say, this is how we're going to get the best ride possible. So the question was about the wood coasters and what can I comment on them? Well, they all three wood coasters that we have here are all original to the park. They were all built and opened in 1981. I guess the construction on some of them started in 1980. They are a beast to maintain and keep operating. Many of you know, maybe all of you know, that we did about 960 feet of track on Minebuster this past winter. We took on a big chore to do that. It was a big expense. It took a lot of time to get finished. We'll continue to do work like that. I can't say if we're going to proceed with work on Minebuster on the second half. I would really like to. But back to my earlier points about which fires are burning brightest, it may not get to the top of the list for 2026. I can't see any of them leaving the park in the near future. I think they're all going to stay. They move a lot of people. People still like them. Some people love that wild finish at Minebuster. Some people don't like it. Some people want all the rides to be butter smooth. Well, in the old days, they didn't run butter smooth. And I think people get a little spoiled with those smooth experiences. If you've ridden the Beast at Kings Island, it's still a crazy ride. Okay, we'll go here. So the question was, on Minebuster and Wild Beast and Ghost Coaster, those rides all operated in the early days with a single lap bar and a single bench seat. Minebuster and Wild Beast were modernized to a individual lap bar back in the 90s. But because they're individual lap bars, if you had a continuous bench, you could have one high and one low, which means that somebody could slide over to the more open position. That's why the divider's there. It's required. I can't see us ever going back to the old style lap bar. The problem we had with those is that it gave the riders an opportunity. If they wanted to stand up during the ride, they could stand up. And people used to try it. I think we live in a world now where, I don't know if it's people don't have a sense of the risk or their own sense of mortality, where people take uncalculated risks sometimes, and we need to sort of protect them from themselves sometimes. Those old style restraints, they may still exist on some rides. I'm not sure which ones. Ghost Coaster still has that single lap bar with that bench seat, but we've added seatbelts to it now. So the question was, does the company have a policy to send people to other parks to experience them? It's not a written policy. It is part of our business decisions to get the best product possible. So sometimes I'll reach out to other parks and talk to their maintenance staff about their experience with a particular ride and would they recommend it. Sometimes the people who work on the rides are the ones who will give you the most information on how well it performs. So we've got a pretty great community, even with competing parks, to be able to share knowledge or experience. As far as traveling, I wasn't doing it on my own time. I did it as part of my job to visit those parks and be there very early in the morning to talk to the mechanics who were working on the ride before it opened, and then to watch the operation and experience the ride. So the question was on the Minebuster, we've got two different track styles there. One is from the Gravity Group and one is traditional horizontal laminate track. So the Gravity Group, I met those guys at IAPA back in 2022, maybe 2021, I don't remember, when they were proposing this track system. And I was very interested in it, but I wanted to talk to people who had done it. So last summer I was at Kings Island, and they had done it on the Racer, and they had done a portion on the Beast. So I spent some time with their carpenters and with my counterpart. We walked out along the track, and I could see the way the ride performed up close. And then I was able to ride those two rides and experience a new versus old. The way the gravity track system works is that the lumber is stacked vertically. So if you've ever seen a house under construction, any of the lintels over the doors and windows, they don't lay the lumber this way, they stack it this way. The wood is much stronger in the vertical position. And what Gravity Group does is they come up with that profile of the track, based on the speed curve to make it as smooth as possible and to give you the best air time at those points. And then they cut those pieces in their shop on a giant CNC machine. CNC is a computer numeric controlled cutting machine, and it can cut very precisely those arcs. So in the old days, those curves were all cut by hand. So you'd have a carpenter out there cutting them, and it wasn't very precise. Well, this new technology, or the new way of producing this lumber, can be very smooth. The top two layers are still stacked horizontally, but it follows that vertical stack, and it follows the speed curve really well. So that's the main difference from old and new.
What's the lifespan?
Oh, sorry, the lifespan, I don't have a good sense of that yet. I'm expecting to get a long life out of it, in excess of 10 years, probably even longer. The benefit of this is that because you're not getting what we call flatlining between the bents. So the bents are the wooden structures that hold the track up. When you have a curve going over them, if there's an opportunity for that track to sag, then you get flatlining between the bents. So you can imagine kind of like string art. If you put a bunch of nails in a piece of wood and you pull string around them, you can see those flat spots. What this does is that it doesn't allow those flat spots to happen because the track can't sag anymore. And if you don't have the sagging, it doesn't beat up on the rest of the system. So you're not pounding the wood or the steel into the wood. So if you get that smooth curve, in theory, you shouldn't have to maintain it as aggressively as you have to with the other design. So hopefully that explains it. So we'll go here in the blue. Yeah, the little girl, sorry. The question was if I could bring any type of IP, any type of intellectual property, like a brand, I don't know, you guys know what an IP is, right? What would it be and why? I've personally never been drawn to the IP as being the reason that people come to ride the rides. Maybe with children, it's a little bit different. When Dora was here, the kids wanted to ride the Dora rides. When Scooby-Doo was here, same thing. But on the bigger rides, I think people want to ride them because of that genuine thrill that they're going to achieve from it. And whether the ride's called Flight Deck or Top Gun, do people really care? I don't think so. So I don't have an IP myself that I think would be a good ad here. Because I think people come for a different reason. That's my sense. So the question was, why does Dragonfire have an over-the-shoulder restraint where Alpen Fury doesn't? So Dragonfire was built in 1981, and it was part of a ride development that the design of that restraint was to try and keep people in from when you go upside down. Alpen Fury is different in that it has a secondary restraint at your shins. And some people hate that, but it's a requirement of that restraint that if the shin guard wasn't there, you could get out of the restraint. But because the shin guard's there, and the shape of your leg prevents you from coming out of the seat. So if we didn't have the shin guard, we would need to have a over-the-shoulder restraint as well. The question was, are there any plans for refurbishment at Flight Deck? So that's a question about the future. Anybody remember what I said about the future? We're always looking at, it sort of connects to that other question about how do we prioritize which rides we're going to modernize or improve. It is on my list, it's on our list, it's been on our list for a while, and it comes back to the question of which fires are burning brighter and which ones do we have to deal with. But it is on my list to take care of at some point. So we'll go here. So the question was, what have been some of the ups and downs of working in the amusement industry, and what was the second part? Second part of that was advice for people looking to get into the industry. So some of the big ups for me are when we produce a ride that everybody loves. That's pretty rewarding. When I can stand on the exit ramp or on the exit side of the platform and sort of be a fly on the wall and hear that unsolicited feedback, you know, the hoops and hollers and the high fives, and that's really rewarding. It's also rewarding for me when I see somebody get on the ride maybe a young kid, and they look to their mom and they say, I don't know if I could do this, and they get convinced that they can do it, so they ride it, and they're scared when they leave, but when they come back, they're like, I did it, that's amazing. That's a pretty cool feeling to see that more than once. The kids conquer their fears. Some of the low points, working through the challenges of the construction, because sometimes we find things during construction, like working in that mountain, that's like working in an old house. If any of you have ever worked in an old house, you find things during the work that you didn't expect to be there. You're like, oh man, how are we going to finish this now? Because we didn't expect that. That's going to cost more money. It's going to be more time. It's tough, but I'm a puzzle guy. I love escape rooms. I love board games. I love solving problems. So to be out there in the nitty gritty, being able to say, well, this is going to be tough, but we're going to figure it out. And when we actually achieve it, that's pretty rewarding too. So taking those negatives and turning them into positives is a big plus for me. Any advice for people getting into the industry? It's very tough. I get this question a lot. I started working here 1987 as a ride operator. I worked at Wonder Tour, the antique cars, pushing the buttons. I worked at Lazy Snail Trail. If you ever remember Lazy Snail Trail, the ride's long gone now. But I was doing an undergraduate degree in mechanical engineering. So I'm a mechanical engineer now. And I just worked through different positions here at the park over the years, and I was sort of ready when opportunities came up. It's really tough for people to break into the industry at those upper levels. It's like you need to spend time in the trenches and be ready to make moves when moves present themselves. But the deck is almost stacked against people who really want to do that because there's so few positions. And people stick around. Those who love it stick around for a long time. So there's not like there's opportunities presenting themselves all the time. People are in it. The guy who worked in this position before me, he worked in the park for 43 years. So I've only been here 37 years, 38, I don't know, something like that. And if I'm here for a few more years, that doesn't create an opportunity for somebody to move up, which doesn't create the opportunity for the next guy to move up, you know what I mean? So if you want to get into science and engineering, I just say be good at math, show up to class, participate, and if you can get a job working in the industry, whether it be in the trades, we hire a lot of millwrights. The millwrights that work on the rides typically provide the best solutions to some of our problems because they're working day in, day out with the equipment. We hire industrial electricians, we've got licensed carpenters, we've got painters and plumbers and HVAC technicians. We've got people on the creative services side, theatrical painters, sculptors, sign shop, or sign fabricators. I have about 100 people that work for me year-round in all of those trades. And then we hire probably about 200 to help us through the operating season on other things. Yeah, so. The question was, have I enjoyed watching the park transform? Yeah, very much. The park has changed a lot since 1987. When I first started coming to the park, it was all farmland as far as you can see. I don't love the traffic around the park now. It's a lot. And having neighbors right across the street, we used to be, our closest neighbors, there was a turkey farm and a chicken farm just north, and the turkeys and the chickens didn't care about the noise, right? So I don't love that the city's grown up so much around us, but what are you going to do? That's the evolution of the society. But I have loved being able to be a part of adding new attractions and making them fit like they've always been there. When people come into the park, they say, "You sure Yukon Strikers have been here since the beginning?" I'm like, "No, we added it in 2019." They're like, "Really? How did you get it to fit?" So it's pretty cool. So, the question was, how do the launch systems on Alpen Fury, how does it compare to the launch system on Backlot Stunt Coaster? So there's two different technologies there. They're similar. One is a linear induction motor. That's on Backlot Stunt Coaster, it used to be an Italian job. And linear synchronous motors on Alpen Fury. So Alpen Fury at peak, I'm going to probably tell you the wrong number. It's somewhere around 4 megawatts of power that we inject into those linear synchronous motors at the launch. So the acceleration curve and the speed curve on Alpen Fury is much steeper than it is on backlit stunt coaster. You probably feel the difference when you ride it. The other thing we did, the other main difference between the two is that we use an energy storage system on Alpen Fury. So we've got a large battery bank inside the mountain where we store up that immense amount of energy, and then we're able to quickly discharge it to the launch system. What that does is it does two things for us. It helps us keep the ride running, the ride will run through a power flicker. So sometimes if the power supplier wants to shut a system down and turn on or feed it from a different side, we'll get something called a power flicker, where the lights will flicker and come back on very quickly. Well, the ride won't notice that because we're filtering the power through that energy storage system. The other thing it'll do is it'll allow us to run the ride in a blackout. So if we lose power, we can still run the ride for 3 more cycles. So we don't have to evacuate the ride out in the mountain. So the ride won't even notice. The operators will notice. We'll get an alert that the incoming power is off and that the batteries are, well, the batteries will continue to run the ride. And then the other thing that it does is that it reduces our electricity costs. Because here in Ontario, our energy costs are directly related to our peak power demand. So in the province of Ontario, when the province has a high peak, if you're contributing to that high peak, then you pay a penalty for that as a commercial industrial customer. So by putting it on a battery system, our energy consumption stays very flat, and then we have that large energy curve or energy draw coming out of the batteries when it launches, but we're not imposing that draw on the grid. So it's like almost like a waterfall. We're storing up all this energy and then we open the gate and let the water out. But the stream up front, it's not building up, it's not asking for water all at once. We're closing the dam, building up the water, and then opening it up and shedding it out to the ride. So it keeps our electricity costs low as well by doing that. Question was, how often do we give rides paint jobs? So it's not on a time schedule. It comes back to that question about how do we prioritize what work we do? It's all about which fires are burning brighter and what are our priorities. Do we want a ride to be painted or do we want Sledgehammer to keep running? You know what I mean? Like it's a tough question. So. Let's go, in the burgundy jacket, there you go. Yeah. Question was, will we be doing any renovations at guest services? So that's a question about the future. That's something that has been on our list to renovate that area. And back to my other point about brighter fires burning, it falls onto a list, right? So it's, so the question was, have I ridden Siren's Curse at Cedar Point? I have not. I typically get to Cedar Point in the winter when nothing's running. So I haven't been there to ride it. Have I ridden any of the newer generation Vekoma rides? The last one I rode was Guardians of the Galaxy at, I don't even know what park that's at. Epcot, I think? Is that at Epcot? I was there. I did a behind-the-scenes tour of that ride with IAPA a few years ago. And I was more interested in the launch systems that they were running. So that was helpful for me planning this ride. So I was very impressed. The Vekoma is a much different ride than they used to be. And in talking to the Vekoma team, different parts of their team from the engineering side or from the marketing side, it is a different company than it used to be. So it's not the old Vekoma for sure. So the question was, how hard was it to build Alpen Fury through the mountain? It was a challenge for sure. We had to fit the ride obviously through an existing structure, but we had to add some things. We had to create some fire separations inside. We had to add some new decks. We had to put ride foundations in there. The foundations were probably the trickiest and most challenging part, because when we build these foundations, they're typically drilled piers. And they can be anywhere from 3 feet diameter up to 6 feet diameter. And we have a big machine that comes in and drills them, and some of them are down 8, 9 meters. And then we put a big steel cage inside and fill that with concrete. and we're bearing on this this grade till. It's a very we're very fortunate because the ground conditions here are very good for supporting high loads. But in the mountain, it was tough to get a drill rig inside to drill some of those deep foundations. And a few of them we had to do with hydrovac. I don't know if you're familiar with hydrovac. It's a giant, you've probably seen them on the highway, these giant trucks with these big tanks, and it has a big vacuum hose on the back of it. And they use that to vacuum dirt, basically. But one of them, actually, we had to do 3 of them this way, and it took a long time. It was very, very expensive because having a drill rig, you can basically drill the hole, get the cage in, and fill it with concrete in one day. Well, to do these other 3, it took about 3 weeks each to do with hydrovac. It took a long time. But those are parts of the ride that nobody ever sees or cares about. So that's just one of the many challenges we had building the ride inside a mountain. Okay, we'll go here. Question was, what would I change about Alpen Fury if I had the chance? I don't know that there's anything I would change. I think it's a great ride. I think it's a good addition to our park. I think it's been very reliable for us. It runs and runs and runs. I guess if I could make if we had unlimited budget, I would have made the track longer, added another block component, and add a 3rd train. But it would have made the problem with that is that it makes the project prohibitive because it gets too expensive. You can't build it. Building a dream ride, if you have unlimited money, sure, that's great. But we live in a world of realities, right? And the budget is the budget. So the question was on Alpen Fury in our maintenance schedule. I'm sure most of you know we have daily inspections. So we've got mechanics who work on that ride. They come in, they start work at 5 o'clock. So they're here at 4:30 in the morning, and they do 2 of them do a daily inspection on that ride every morning. And so they look at all kinds of things. They look at the train, they look at the track, they look at the launch system, they look at the brakes, they even look at the gates, the Q rails, the stairs, they look at all that stuff. And some stuff they look at every day, and some stuff they only look at weekly. So one example of our weekly inspection and maintenance program is that we have a weekly rotation for greasing of the wheel bogies. So the bogie is the component that has the 3 sets of wheels on it, road wheels, upstops, and side wheels. And we don't grease them every day. We only grease them once a week. And we have a board that tells the guys, on Mondays, you do these wheels, and on Tuesdays, you do these ones, and so on. But there's some things we do every day, like the restraints. We want to make sure that they lock every day. That's just one example of many. But there's lots of tasks on those lists. So the question is, the permanent magnets on the bottom of the train, how often are we checking those? So the guys do look at them every day, but we're not putting a Gauss meter on them, we're not putting a wrench on them. We're just, because they are magnets, sometimes somebody might have lost a necklace that, if it's a ferrous material, it might get stuck inside the magnet. The guys will look up inside with a flashlight, and if there's something in there, an earring or maybe a bobby pin or something, we have to remove those from the magnet because they will conflict with the linear synchronous motors, right? So let's go to the, that's a 2-part question. How do we come up with the Alpen Fury name, and then what was the hardest part of building and maintaining? So Alpen Fury name came after a long process of having lots of name suggestions. And it's basically a decision that's made after much consultation with stakeholders here in the park. So we want it to be a name that's appealing and that kind of fits the theme of the ride. But yeah, it's just a process that we go through. It's not something that I pick. I'm part of the committee that helps drive the name selection. The other part about maintaining and building, the hardest part was those foundations in the mountain. Maintaining, I guess it's been pretty good so far. We haven't had to, there hasn't been anything that's been overly concerning yet. Okay, we'll go back there with the hood, yep. Which ride do I respect the most from a maintenance perspective? Well, they're all pretty good. A lot of thought goes into these rides and attractions. I've been very happy with Snoopy's Racing Railway. We've had great success with that ride, and the uptime on it has been phenomenal. We've hardly had any issues with that ride. That's a ride we've worked closely with Art Engineering out of Germany. We partnered with them on Guardian, and they've done a lot of fabulous rides around the world now, but I've been very happy with that one. The question was, is there a ride manufacturer that I would like to work with? I've worked with a lot of them. There's one water slide manufacturer I'd like to do a project with one day. That's Poland Water Attractions. They're out of Turkey. They do a quality product. I'd like to work with them one day. I've been very happy with all of the rest. Gerschlauer, I think they do a quality product as well. I'd like to see one of their rides one day maybe. But it's not always up to me, right? So the question was, when we add a new attraction, is that Wonderland's choice or is that a corporate decision? Typically, the idea for a new ride starts here at the park. And we have a long-range plan that we look at and we say, we're going to do a family ride, or we're going to do a water park attraction, or we're going to do a high-thrill ride. So with that plan in mind, with the budget, that's where we start to come up with the concepts. And then we are able to present those, and if we get agreement, obviously corporate's involved in the decisions, but typically here at this park, those ideas start with our team. Yeah. So I've got time for 3 more questions, and then we're gonna stop, but I'll hang around nearby. If I don't answer your question, I'll hang around and I'll try and answer it privately instead of with the group. So we'll go with the gray here. The question was related to our sign shop and some of our old signs that we have there, and why do we keep them? So sometimes we hold on to old things because there's some sentimental attachment, or somebody was particularly proud of the work that they did on that sign. So our sign shop, there's 3 people that work there year-round. They maintain all our signs, they build all of our signs. So we don't go outside to do our signs. Some specialty stuff where we do printed fabrics and things like that, we'll go outside. But yeah, we're only holding on to them because of some sentimental reason, and some of them look kind of cool. And it's kind of neat to have the old stuff still around, right? Some people say you're standing on the shoulders of giants, because we really are. There's a lot of people who came before us that took care of this place for a long time, and we know the guys that did those pieces. So the question was, what got me into this field? When I was a kid, my mom was a registered nurse, and she worked part-time because my sisters and I were quite young, so she worked evenings, weekends, and she had a friend who worked here at Canada's Wonderland before the park opened, 1980. And she was asked if she would be a nurse in the first aid center. And that was in the days when there was nurses in there, registered nurses, and they could do kind of basically first aid. So my first memory of coming to the park was before the park was built. She came down to do a tour, and I was invited to tag along. And for the summers that she worked here, sometimes I would have a season's pass, and I'd ride down to work with her, and I'd play in the park all day and ride home with her at night. And I always thought, this is pretty neat. So when I got into high school, sort of my last year of high school, I got a summer job working here. And I decided that I'd keep doing it. And I'd have part-time jobs in university in the winter, working in Toronto, but I'd always come back to Wonderland in the summer, and it just sort of stayed with me. I loved it. It was so much fun working with people who loved being here. You know, it was a bit of a community. So yeah, I'm one of the lucky ones who gets to keep doing it, I guess. I don't know. Some people don't love it. Some people try it and they're like, this is not for me. This is crazy. How do you invite all these people every day and give them a good time? But I love it. It's great. So last question. Who has not asked a question yet? I think I've got some from you guys. Okay, right there. Yep. So the question was the design process for picking the station location. We did look at 2 areas. One is where it is now, and the other one would have been up at Front Gate. And if we had put the station towards Front Gate, where the Sky Coaster used to be, that launch into the mountain would have been at the sort of the back end of the ride instead of at the beginning of the ride. We really wanted to have it as a kick butt, you're in for something cool, right at the front of the ride. And that was the reason that we put it where it was. The other benefit was that we could take advantage of the mountain structure for the train storage. So we've got a workshop in the mountain, we've got the train storage in there, and we've got a high voltage distribution center in the mountain. So we had power close by as well. We didn't need to bring high power transmission to that location. So there's a bunch of reasons really. So anyway, that's all. I hope you guys had a good time this morning. And like I said, I'll hang around if you guys have other questions. I could spend a bit more time. Okay, thanks.